Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today is going to be a fun episode with my friend Brec Bundy of Mule Deer Addiction Outfitters. Brec, how you doing?
Doing good, Jay.
Usually I introduce you as Brec Big Buck Bundy, but I saved you that this time, but that's usually what my nickname is for you. You, a couple years ago, when I was up there in your camp, shot a 290-inch deer on the Arizona Strip in 13B. Has the smile worn off your face yet?
It still hasn't, Jay. I'm sitting here looking at that buck on my wall, you know. What a great time that was, and a great year, and a great group of guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I was super happy. You know, as much time as you've spent up there, it was super cool. I mean, the reality is there was a bunch of people with tags, and you know, a handful of people knew about the deer and what have you, and you were able to get it done, and super proud that you were able to get that, and happy for you because you deserve a big buck. Before we dive into the Arizona Strip and all of what's going on, your forecast and what have you, let's talk a little bit about you for those that haven't heard you on a podcast before. Talk a little bit about where you live, and then I've got a couple questions about what you also do other than outfitting for mule deer. So tell the listeners a little bit about your occupation when you're not chasing deer.
All right. Well, I live in Washington City, Utah, which is, you know, just right alongside St. George. And we're just a mere, 10 minutes from the state line from my house, and so obviously my grandpa was actually born and raised out on the Strip. And so, my dad grew up spending all his time out there, we're time away from home. And so ultimately he ended up taking me and my brothers, and, so we've been our whole lives, going out on the Strip. But anyway, here in Washington, St. George, Washington County, me and my dad own a land surveying business. And so we do a lot of subdivision platting, construction layout, staking, commercial, a lot of hotels. We've done a lot of hotels over the last, 2 or 3 years. So that's kind of what I do, to put food on the table, I guess. Take care of the family.
So to pay for your mule deer addiction.
Exactly.
So, Brec, I mean, the real estate market has just been crazy the last handful of years when we climbed out of our bottom of the '08 crash. And everything I hear about that St. George area is that it's just growing like crazy. And obviously you guys have a surveying business. So you've been able to stay real busy with that, with all of the development, have you not?
I have, exactly.
Yeah. And so would you say, like, daily are you out in the field running around the St. George area? I mean, literally measuring and staking and marking, and then back in the office running drawings and what have you?
Yep, I am. Exactly right. Every day I'm, out in the field. It's pretty rare that I'm not. And if I'm not, then I'm in my office, drafting subdivision plats or doing a record of survey, which, shows how we establish property corners and whatnot. So, but yep, every day I'm out and about somewhere.
Do you feel like your background in surveying, does it convey or does it, that's not the right word, does it relate in any way to your background in hunting and, navigating with, Google Earth, Onyx Maps, all the different tools that are out there? I mean, has that been an easy transition for you?
It has. And it in addition to, mapping and just knowing locations and areas and things like that. But, my surveying, when I first started out, not to get into too much of the details, but, nowadays you see one guy with a GPS, receiver on top of a rod. Back when I first started, we had, what they call a total station, which measures angles and distances. And, you had to physically stand there, sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours a day at the instrument while another person on the crew was out, hammering in the nails and stakes and property corners. and whatnot. So it taught me patience, to be patient.
Yeah.
And so it helped a lot, as far as that goes. So.
I'm sure you've gotten pretty good too at judging distances when you're constantly, shooting yardages and shooting corners and such, where, if you're dealing with, measurements all day long, I'll bet you your perception of distance is pretty good.
It is. It's definitely helped a lot.
Well, Brec, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Arizona Strip. Coming off of last year, pretty dang tough year from a antler growth standpoint compared to normal on the Strip. Where do we stand right now? What are your thoughts for forecast?
It's going to be an incredible year. We're continuing to get storms. Usually May and June are our driest years, or driest months, I should say. And this year, not only have we had incredible moisture, but the temperatures have been really mild, and the vegetation has just taken off like crazy. I mean, it's green, green, really, really green, and the cliff rose is blooming, and so I think it's just going to be an incredible year. And like you said, last year was a tough year, and going back to all, over the years, however many years, looking back, you've never had a bad back-to-back year. And so, I think last year it was tough. There were still some great bucks killed, but I think this year it's going to be incredible. I think you could see some bucks put 40, 50 inches on from what they were last year.
I mean, I know you've been making trips out to the Strip and what have you and checking things out. You talk about it being green. You talk about the cliff rose blooming. I mean, Brec, is this one of those years like you've never seen a year like this with moisture so far, or does it compare to a certain year, or is this like, Jay, I've never seen it like this?
For me, it's as long as I've been guiding, I think this is probably the best as far as the moisture and the temperature and coming off a bad year. I think this is going to be an incredible year. I think it's going to be one of those, and I hope it is. I hope it's going to be, like a 2008 or 14, 15. I really do. I think it's going to with the moisture and temperatures, and it looks like we're going to continue to get some moisture here this week. So.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about getting moisture in May and June, which are your dry months, and then normally it's dry. It's right now is when it's dry, out there, and then it really gets hot in June and dries up, and we have to wait till the monsoon. I mean, the reality is you throw a little bit of temperature, you throw a little heat on this moisture. I mean, the vegetation, all of the plants, and it's just going to go crazy.
It is. And, like I think yesterday I was talking to somebody and they said, yeah, this time last year it was 100 or 105 degrees, on yesterday's date. And we're in the 60s here in St. George, which is really uncommon in, almost into June, So,
yeah.
Pine Valley Mountain, which is just north of St. George, it's got snow clear down, I don't know what the level is, but it's low. And so incredible year as far as moisture and temperature.
All right, we're going to talk about last year's bucks and Brian Rims's buck and some of that stuff here in a minute, but keeping the flow going on this conversation, my question would be, okay, you're anticipating a great year, everything's stacked up with last year being a rougher year, age class of deer, one more year, you're thinking some bucks could grow 40, 50 inches. From a trail camera standpoint, I know you run a lot of trail cameras. I mean, do you get out there and set cameras early? Do you not change anything and just do your normal routine? Talk a little bit about your strategy going into this fall season, what you're going to do.
Well, we're actually gearing up right now, and we're going to actually start setting cameras, this next week, which is early from, what we typically do. Usually, around the 6th of June or so, which I guess will be about next week, we'll be, starting at some of the out-of-the-way spots, places that we need to maybe hike into to set cameras. We'll start with those and then just kind of flood, in from there. But a lot of times it's nice to get them out. One good thing about getting them out early is, we talked a little bit about, May and June are our 2 driest months. Then the monsoons typically kick in around the 4th of July, first or second week in July. And so, a lot of times we'll get a lot of, heavy rainstorms and whatnot. And, there's a lot of water everywhere, which this year, there's going to be a lot of water everywhere. But once it does, finally dry up a little bit, we'll get those bucks coming to water. And
before the monsoon hits.
Before the monsoons hit, exactly. And so if you get them out a little bit earlier, that's the only reason, we're going to start early this year. And we have the last 2 or 3 years started around that first week in June. But, 2 or 3, 4 years ago, I wouldn't start till, around the 4th of July or something like that. And so, but that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to start hitting it hard this next week. And, in addition to me, all my guys run loops. And so we're kind of all spread out all over the place. And so that's what we're going to do, and looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting out and scouting.
Sounds good. Let's talk a little bit about cameras. You have a lot of cameras. You've run a lot of cameras. You have a lot of experience with different cameras. Talk about the cameras that you're running now. Maybe if it's multiple models, or if you're really high on a certain model or brand or what have you.
Yeah, we're running primarily stealth camera and coverts. Both, in my opinion, are great cameras. We have run, years and years ago, some of the Mule trees, and they were good. I haven't run any of the newer ones, but anyway, yeah, stealth cameras kind of been what we've went to. The reason being they're a little bit brighter LED lights, so you get a little bit, you can light it up a little bit better at night. If the deer's out, a little ways further, you can see it a little bit better over like the covert cameras. But the coverts are awesome. I mean, we've had a lot of coverts for years now, and they're still working. The battery life's great on them. And so we, a lot of times we'll use the little coverts, MP8. I don't even know what they probably have a newer model, but, we'll use those on the game and fish drinkers, where it's just a little drinker that they come into, in a little small area that they, have to drink. And so we'll use our covert cameras on those. And then, for instance, on ponds where it's, tougher to get a good picture, the deer you never know where exactly they're going to come in. We'll use the stealth cameras just because they are, brighter, give us a little bit more distance to be able to see what that buck is.
What models on stealth cam are you running?
We have several different models. I really love and I think you actually got some, Gabe, the 4Ks. What is it, the
Yep.
TS4K?
Yep.
That would be, I mean, if you could afford it, that's, in my opinion, an awesome camera. As far as the video quality, the pictures, it's a sweet camera. And then we've got, we're running some of the, and I don't even know some of the older model, the ZX24, I believe. We have several of those, and then, what's the in-between model?
You turned me on to G34 Pro a couple of years ago.
The G34 Pro, there you go. Yep, I love the G34 Pro.
Okay. As far as setting up your cameras and trying to help people that are listening in camera setup, what are some things you learned as far as, direction, height, just go through kind of your basic checklist of things that you've learned while setting up cameras and trying to get the best photos or videos.
Okay, obviously one thing, and sometimes you have to do it, but, facing into the sun coming up or going down. So east-west, you want to try to get kind of a north-south if you can. And, sometimes the sun will cause your camera, if it's for whatever reason, it'll take multiple pictures, get the movement of the sun or whatever. But, and so as far as that, north-south is the best. Sometimes I'll just look at a spot, kind of do a 360 all the way around the water and think, man, if you had this angle, you'd have an awesome background. And so I kind of look at that. And then, as far as height, I set it up, about waist high. Sometimes you have to set them up really low and then tip them up. But I try to get somewhat of a level to the deer's body and stuff if you can. There's sometimes you put it up high in a tree and you have to kind of angle it down. But I know you and I have talked too, the position of the deer and stuff. Trail camera pictures can be so deceiving. And so to get that perfect picture, and a lot of times what I'll do too is I'll set my camera up how I think it should be, and then I'll let it take a couple pictures and just check on my my phone or whatever, my iPad, and just check and see if that's set the way I want it. So
talk about the actual trying to get animals. Do you try and get them walking perpendicular to the camera so they're walking by? Do you try and get them walking into the camera, away from the camera? What is your best strategy for that?
Walking towards the camera is by far the best. That gives you, if you can get that head up, dead on look at a buck, to me, that gives me, some people might like a side angle, and, a lot of times we'll get multiple angles. It might take a week or 2 weeks before we get, a certain angle to where we want to see more on the left side or the right side, but definitely head on, in my opinion, is the best.
So as far as like trails coming into water holes and stuff, talk about the way I understand it is, and you've kind of taught me this before, I've talked to you on the phone about it, like if you've got a trail, you don't want to put the camera where if the deer were to walk down the trail, it just gets a left to right photo of them. You want to get it where it gets the deer coming from a long ways away, so maybe you're going to pick up multiple pictures, as well as if the deer's leaving down the trail, you're going to get several images of the deer going away from you. Whereas if the deer was just walking perpendicular to the camera, you may not even get the deer because it's just going to, the motion detector is going to go off one time, and in one frame he's already going to be through it. You want that motion detector to get multiple chances at that deer coming straight towards the camera, or even at a little bit of a quartering angle, right?
Exactly. Yep, you're exactly right.
Okay. And then normally, like this first set, when you guys go out next week, what's your normal burst? Obviously, talk about if it has to do with cattle or no cattle, or talk about how you're set, your frames, how many pictures, blah, 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 what the delay is. Talk about your normal, and then talk about if that changes as the season comes through.
Gotcha. Okay, so what I do a lot of times is I'll do like one picture, every 10 seconds. And that's, in a spot, say, for instance, game and fish catchments, which, most people would know what they are, but it's just a little enclosure, and it has a tin surface that catches rainwater and then runs into a tank, and it's, for all the game, not for cattle. And so in those types of spots, I'll definitely set it for one picture every 10 seconds, because primarily all you're going to have is, is game, deer, rabbits, mountain lions, bobcats, all that. And so one picture every 10 seconds, I'll do. And sometimes, especially these first couple months, in the summertime, out on the strip, we'll get a lot of birds. Literally 1,000, 2,000 pictures in a week of just birds. And so in those cases, I'll actually time my camera, or I'll have my camera start taking pictures closer to the evening hours when the deer are going to be more active. So say, 5, 6 o'clock, I'll have my camera start taking pictures, and then I'll have it stop taking pictures, say, around 10 or 11 o'clock. Just that way it cuts down on, all those thousands of pictures that we have to filter through, versus, just trying to get the deer or bigger animals. And so that's kind of how we set.
So in other words, you're midday, right during noon when the birds are just all over the water, it won't be taking, but at prime time, morning and night, it'll be taking photos.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And we do that on a lot of them, not all of them. And then obviously where there's cattle, those cattle will just fill your card up in a hurry. And so we'll time those out, and a lot of times we'll do it a little bit more aggressive. Say we'll have it start taking pictures at maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night, so we only get that last hour, of daylight, and then have it stop taking pictures at 8 o'clock in the morning, and just saves us from filtering through all those pictures. So, but same thing. A lot of times on those too, we will just do like one picture every 30 seconds or 1 minute, just to try to cut down on the amount of pictures we have to go through.
I know Hunter Meekum and I over at the Ot6 Ranch, and I'm curious your thoughts on, once we kind of get a couple of target animals that we're like, ooh, this buck or this bull or this bear or something is hitting pretty random or pretty consistently, we'll then set up multiple cameras to get all kinds of different angles. Yeah. Do you do the same thing where, maybe absolutely. In July when you start being able to tell what bucks are what, and you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to kind of flood that area and try and get as many good photos or video that I can?
Exactly. Yep, we do the exact same thing. If we get a really, big buck or even, a handful of them, and that's where, that DS4K that Stealth Cam makes, I love it for this. So we get a giant buck on camera. We'll leave our camera that's taking pictures and, like you say, set another camera or even 2 more cameras just to get, some really good 4K video. And so, it makes it fun, too, because you get all the different angles and everything else. But
okay, you brought up something that I just want to touch on, and that's, deer coming to water and timing. When would you say are the best times, from all the years of running cameras, and it may change throughout the season, but, let's talk about kind of this early season, velvet season. When do you get the most pictures? Is it at night? Is it, when is it?
I would say it varies from location even, because out on the strip, I mean, you can go from, 8,000-9,000 feet. You're up in the Ponderosa Pines. Up there, the deer are a little more active. And as far as, pictures at night versus day, I would tend to say we get more pictures late evening than we do, say, early morning. But it just, like I say, it kind of varies as far as location. You go from the Ponderosas down into the low desert stuff where the deer aren't as active. You definitely pick them up more at night. Evening, late evening, early morning, and middle of the night. And there's just, it's funny. Some bucks over the years, some bucks are, they're not camera shy at all. They don't care about the camera, and, don't care, they may come into water at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and that's where trail cameras are really, really beneficial, especially from archery, for archery hunting standpoints. You get the ability, it gives you the ability to figure out, or try to figure out when a certain buck or a buck or multiple bucks that you're hunting, when they're coming in. And so,
yeah, that brings up a good segue to last year's archery season. Brian Rimza, you and I's mutual friend, I had him on the podcast, and he was talking about, how fortunate he was to shoot that buck. I talked to Clay Bundy. I had him on the podcast, and he had talked about how you and MDA and Clay Bundy Outfitters kind of share camera sets and share information and stuff because the strip is so big. Talk a little bit about that archery buck. It sounds like Talon had some pictures of that buck, and you and Brian were able to get that buck killed, and talk about last year's archery season a little bit.
Yeah, last year it was tough. And I haven't had a chance to listen to the podcast that you did with Brian, but it was tough. I mean, we saw our buck, and our target buck, our number one buck, wasn't the buck that Brian ended up killing. But Brian, once he laid eyes on the deer he ended up getting. He saw him, I believe, the night or 2 nights before. Obviously wasn't able to get a shot, but he said, this buck is giant, but Talon did. He was in an area that Talon ran and got some awesome trail camera pictures, and gave us an idea of what the deer was doing as far as, coming in, day, night, that sort of thing. But like you said, yeah, we've worked with Clay the last 2 or 3 years, three years or so, and it's like you say, the strip's so big, and it's like, Clay being family, we started talking, and it's like, well, if I have a camera here and you have a camera here, we're both going to be, and there's a big enough buck, we're both going to be here hunting anyway, so why don't we just share information, and it frees up and gives us that many more cameras, that much more area we can run. So it's really worked out, I think, well for the both of us, and so it was a lot of fun. But like, last year's archery hunt, like I say, it was tough. It finally dried out. It rained a bunch before the hunt, and then it finally dried out. I think Brian killed his buck on day 8, I want to say. But it was tough. I mean, it was a tough 8 days. We got really close, spot and stalk. One morning we turned up our number 1 buck, which Brian called kickstand. Later on during the rifle hunt.
Is that the one Nick Mutt shot?
It might have been the one Nick shot. But
awesome you're deer. Talking about the buck that got shot on the rifle hunt.
Yeah, on the rifle hunt. Yep. No, okay. Not the one that Nick shot. Yeah. No, not that one. But yeah, one that got shot on the rifle hunt. So, but last year, I mean, like I say, it was tough. We were in the right spot, and Brian got it done. I mean, he made a heck of a shot, and I mean, what a buck. I mean, it was, I don't know, it was one of the biggest bucks to come off of the strip last year, and so just an awesome buck. And, Brian's been up here and helped his dad, helped his wife, kill great bucks, and it was finally his turn last year, and we got it done.
Yeah, it was fun because Brian was up the year Parker, when me and Dar and Parker were up there, Brian was up there as well, and then he was up there, you guys shot Aspen's big buck, you shot Nicole's big buck, Skip's big buck. It's just been awesome to see you guys, your whole team, and all the success. I remember, it's been a couple of years, but I remember, I think it was the year Danny Bright had a tag. What was her name? The girl that shot just a whopper buck with one of your guides, and then Brett that same year. I forget the guys. Niels Foley. Wasn't it Mills or maybe his daughter? I forget. One of them shot a big old 225 buck too.
Yeah. Yep. Mills did. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
We've had some really good. Oh, sorry, Jay. I was just going to say we MDA and the Rimsas have had a really good good streak the last few years. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about this year. Let's talk about your thoughts on, last year with, yes, there were a few good bucks shot, but overall antler growth was down. How much you think that 1 year extra growth, one more year of age class is going to play into this year with great, range conditions. How is that going to, how do you think it's going to shape out that?
I think it's going to be awesome. Thinking of one buck in particular, just right off the top of my head. So 2 years ago, not this last year, 2 years ago, me and one of my guys, Andy, filmed this buck on July 8th or 10th or something. Anyway, this buck we knew he was a really young buck, but he was awesome. And last year, you wouldn't even, you could hardly recognize him. He was down that much, he was off big time. But this year, I think he could, with that one more, like you said, one year more age on him, and a year like this, as far as the moisture and temperatures, I think it's going to be mind-boggling. And so
it's a type of buck that you'll be able to, you'll show the photos of him last year, and then you're thinking you'll show the photos of him this year, and people will be like, how is that even the same buck? I mean, that's what you're thinking. It's just going to be just completely 40, 50-inch difference of just craziness?
Yep, I do. I really do. And, even last year, if you looked at the buck from last year and then the year before when we filmed him, I had to sit and look, and I'm like, that can't be the same deer. And it was. I mean, it was just almost like, holy cow, he was down that much, But, and like I say, he was a younger deer, and this year, he made it through last year, obviously. He's just got that one, he's 1 year older. He's getting to that point where he could be something special. So.
Now, talk about just bucks in general out there that aren't even on your radar. They could potentially just blow up as well, right?
They could, yep, they could. I think there's going to be bucks this year that we're going to say, where did that buck come from, And going back, it might even be hard to tell, looking at pictures from last year to this year, what buck it was, That's how much I think, how well I think it's going to be this year.
How good? Yeah.
How good, yep, exactly.
Yeah. So it seems like when we've done some podcasts in the past, A has been kind of, it seems like everyone's kind of said, man, A's been struggling. 2010, they shot all those big deer, and it's just never seemed to really bounce back. What are your thoughts on A going into this year?
I think it's going to be better. I'm still, recommending, suggesting to guys that, they, especially guys with max points, to go with 13B, first and only still. That being said, with a year like this, I think 13A and with, the Game and Fish lowering the tag numbers, 2 years ago, I think it's gonna be a lot better than it has been. And not that A's, it's just not at its true potential. There are still a couple great bucks on A that we know of, and there's probably, a bunch that we don't know about, but that's what I'm recommending. I'm still saying 13B first and only for guys that have, max points, just because, and I think it will happen, and hopefully this year, 13A is going to come back and be back to what it has been in the past.
So 15 tags, I believe, on A. I mean, that's just not very many people for, if it were to dry out, that archery tag would be pretty dang good, don't you think?
It would. Yeah, it would, for sure. And that's what they did. They went from 25 tags on 13A to 15, and then they lowered it, I believe, from 65 or whatever down to 50 on the rifle. And I think that's going to help. I really do. I think those lower tag numbers, it's going to get the bucks the age they need to be at their, the top of their
maximum.
Yeah, exactly.
Brec, I want to take a quick second here and thank the sponsors of this podcast. Without the sponsors, this podcast wouldn't be possible. I also want to point out to everyone listening is this podcast is free, and the support of I'm able to spend the amount of time that I do because I have sponsors on the podcast. So I really appreciate the listeners supporting these podcast sponsors. I want to thank GoHunt.com. My friend Cody Nelson is the optics manager over at the gear shop at GoHunt.com. If you have any binocular spotting scopes, tripods, any glassing needs, any optical needs at all, give Cody a call at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. You can also send him an email at optics@gohunt.com. I also want to remind you guys about the Go Hunt Insider. The Go Hunt Insider, if you go to gohunt.com/JScott, you're going to get a $50 Go Hunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up. That is the best Western hunting resource when you're looking at, these states like Arizona, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, all the Western states. They have the best draw odds. So go to gohunt.com/JScott and sign up for an Insider membership. I also want to thank KUIU, KUIU Ultralight Hunting. Kuiu is the gear that I wear on all my hunts. You can go to kuiu.com for more information, and you can order right off of the website. Also, canyoncoolers.com, based right out of Flagstaff, Arizona. The coolers that I use all summer long fishing and the coolers I use during my hunting trips. Use the JScott19 promo code for a 10% discount. Phonescope.com, that's the digiscoping device I use on my phone for videos and pictures. Use the JScott19 promo code at phonescope.com. You're going to get a 10% discount. And onxmaps.com, if you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 20% discount there at onxmaps.com. I use onX for all my hunts. I used it down in Mexico. Even though the public-private overlay doesn't work in Mexico, the aerial worked awesome. I was able to plot points and roads, and then when you're in the states, in all these different states, you've got the topo overlay, the aerial overlay, you've got the measuring tool, you've got the breadcrumb feature. It's just an awesome resource. You can use the desktop to import and export stuff off Google Earth into the desktop, and then it's automatically on your onX on your phone on the app. So use the JScott19 promo code, and you're going to save 20% there at onxmaps.com. I want to thank all of the sponsors, and thank you guys for supporting those sponsors. Okay, Brec, we've talked a little bit about 13A, and so you're saying with people with max points, you're still telling them chase the B, the rifle B tag. Do you think that the age class, do you think this year could be one of the best years we've seen in B? There have been some phenomenal bucks shot in the last 4 or 5 years, but do you think that this year could surpass and maybe overall in general be one of the best years we've ever had?
I think it's going to be definitely up there. I think it's going to be, as good of a year as we've had. I really do. Even, a lot of times we can look at bucks that made it through the hunt and know that he's going to be a great buck. And this year, I think it's one of those years that you're going to have a lot of these younger bucks that are just going to blow up. And so I would say it's going to be a phenomenal year.
As far as the timing of the season, you've got the 13B hunt starts on November 8th through the 17th. Being a wet year, do you think they'll be potentially rutting at the beginning of that season, or do you think it'll have to wait till towards the end to see some rutting?
It just depends. If we get some early, like a cold spell and a little bit of moisture, I think that really helps get the rut going. I've talked before on your podcast, like going back to 2008, we had a cold spell that came through and it actually snowed, I think, the week before the 13B hunt started, which, was the first Friday of November. And we saw some great rut activity, in 2008. And so I think it just depends, but, a lot of times, towards the tail end of the hunt, where 13B is first just this year will be, you'll see a little bit more and a little bit better rutting activity the later into the hunt you go.
Yeah, for sure. And then A, obviously, the rut should be going pretty darn good in A with those dates. The dates overlap, but you've got November 15th to the 24th. The last 7 days of that hunt should be just crazy, shouldn't it?
It should, yeah, because, a lot of times, or what I've seen over the years is, the peak of the rut a lot of times is right around, Thanksgiving. And so, yeah, those later dates on 13A are going to be, it should be awesome.
Is there, you're looking at your buck right now on the wall. I'm sure you're looking at some of the others on the wall as well. It's hard to look at a 290-inch deer, or what was it, 291? What did it end up scoring?
He was I think he officialed at like 286 gross, and then netted 274, I think, something like that.
And I mean, what is that? One of the top 10 biggest bucks ever harvested on the Strip?
He's got to be right there.
Or top 5?
Top 5, 10, somewhere. He's definitely in there for sure. I was very fortunate and lucky to get him. But
I mean, do you think that a year like this, I mean, would it surprise you if a buck like the one you're looking at on your wall, would it surprise you if a buck like that comes out of there this year?
No, it would not surprise me. I think I think there's a good chance that there's going to be, 1 or 2 special bucks, maybe even 3 or 4 roaming the hills out on the Strip this year.
I was talking with Jason Bond of Bond Outfitters, and he does a lot of stuff on the Kaibab and 12B and does some stuff on the Strip. And he pointed out, too, I think all of the auction tag holders still have tags in their pocket. I'm not sure about the raffle tag holders, but he pointed out that just keep in mind if you're applying for the rifle hunts that a couple of the bucks will, get probably mucked out by the auction tag holders. What's your thoughts on that?
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's one of those things you just have to deal with. I know even back when Daniel Franco drew the tag in, what was that, 2011 or no, 2013.
13, right?
Yeah, 2013. We talked about it, and it's like, man, it's just, one of the bucks, one of our top bucks that we wanted to hunt, ended up getting killed by a raffle hunter that still had his tag. And so yep, that's a definite possibility.
I still remember that buck.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brec. I still remember that buck. If I remember right, there was like a big tire, and you'd sent me and Daniel a bunch of photos, and I mean, he lifted his head, and it was one of those your jaw just dropped when it. There was like a big tractor tire or something in the photo, and I think that's the buck. And then that buck ended up getting shot, but Daniel was fairly heartbroken over that. He was,
and that's just one of those things. Going into this year, you got to think, okay, two of the biggest deer, or potentially 2 of the biggest bucks, are going to be killed before you have a chance to hunt. And so they have till, I believe it's like what, August 14th, or something like that, and then you have this next year's, the 2 auction tags and a raffle tag for this year that will start. They can begin hunting on the 15th of August. And so potentially you may have 5 or 6, of the biggest bucks killed before you even get a chance to hunt. So it is kind of a downer for those guys that, have max points and, are really likely to draw, but it's one of those things that you just have to
it's like that almost every year, other than the fact that maybe last year was bad and everybody's, waiting to harvest this year. But, that's going to happen every year. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 tags on most years since, last year was a drought and most of the guys are waiting. But still, I mean, there's a lot of bucks to go around and a lot of great bucks to go around.
Exactly.
What about non-typical points on a year like this, non-typical points? What's your thoughts on that?
We're going to see a lot of bucks with trash, with non-typical points for sure. On a year like this, with the moisture we've had and the feed that they have, a lot of bucks, and the Strip's known for big gnarly deer. And so I think we're going to see a lot of bucks, even younger bucks, have some trash on them.
What would be, guys listening to this podcast, thinking about applying, whether they have max or whether they're just going to try and get the tag in the random pool, what would you tell those guys as far as, I mean, yes, it's the Arizona Strip, yes, it's a great year, but you still have to kind of ground check your expectations, do you not?
You do. You absolutely do. No matter the year, and I think you and I have discussed this before, even on tough years, there's some great bucks. There were some good bucks killed last year. They're just far and few between. But even that being said, you think of the Strip, and it's an awesome place, and it produces some of the biggest deer in the world. In my opinion, 13B is the number 1 tag to have. but it's not. You still have to come up and hunt, and physically, mentally.
Well, and you have to have things go your way, right?
Exactly. You do.
Not only do you come up and hunt, but I mean, a lot of things have to stack in your favor. I mean, you could have the best guides. I mean, let's face it, there's some great guides up there, you guys included. There's some great guys. Everybody's trying to kill a big deer, but not everybody does. I mean, you still have to have things go in your favor, and it has to be, it has to be meant to be.
Exactly. I mean, like, for instance, last year, Brett, Brett really well.
Yeah.
Brett was guiding, and he's got, you know how Brett is. I mean, he's going. He's always thinking, and and so he's got guys all set up and everything, and another outfitter, they were late and they were hauling butt down the road and came around a turn, and there was this, he was a big deer standing off the side of the road. He was just in a little spot that Brett couldn't see into and his spotters couldn't see into, so. And they were only, probably 400 or 500 yards away from the buck when it got shot. And so, like you say, everything, it's still got to come together. So
I want to be the guy in the vehicle one time. I just want that one time of going, okay, I'm that guy. I just want that one time, because I've seen it happen so many times where you're the one at 3 a.m. hiking up with the headlamp, and then it just happens. And that's what I was getting at, like. You still have to set your mind right when you go on hunts like this, because it is not, you could literally hire every one of the best guys on the strip and have every one of them working for you, and it still might not work out. Like, you have to set your mind that it's a grind. You have to set your mind that there's going to be some deer that potentially are going to, slip through your grasp. You have to be able to refocus and reshuffle if, a deer or two gets killed. You have to be able to dodge and weave and pivot. And I think a lot of guys get in the mindset, and they just have a mental breakdown. I mean, I've seen it up there on the strip. I've been up there limited time, but I've seen guys literally pack up and leave and quit. And it's because they don't set their mind right for what they're about to, partake in.
Exactly. Yep. You've got to have that mental understanding that, hey, this could be a grind. Like, for instance, the guy that Brett guided last year, Tom Poliai, we did everything, we were busting our butts, and Tom ended up killing a cool buck the last day of the hunt, but he knew, he was staying there the whole time, no matter how tough it was, or, this buck gets shot,
right.
Just over the hill from where they couldn't see into, and so, and he ended up killing a cool buck on the the last day of the hunt. And so you're totally right. You gotta have it mentally. Hey, it could be a grind. So
yeah. When do you expect the bucks to really be in that shape and form where you can look at them and go, yeah, that's going to be a smoker? I mean, at what point in time? Is it mid-July? Is it late July? When is it where you're like, oh yeah, that buck is on our list?
Yeah, typically by the middle of July we'll have a good idea. And even there's been some years that I'm thinking back years and years ago, like in the late 90s, I filmed a buck. There were 4 bucks together, I think. There was one buck in particular that he looked like he was almost done, and this was like around the 4th of July, and the other buck still had a ton of growing to do, and so you will see that every so often as well. But I would say middle of July we'll have a really good idea. We'll be able to tell what they're going to have as far as extras and non-typical points and stuff like that. So,
Brec, let's talk optics for a second. You've run through a whole smattering of optics, much like I have. What is your go-to setup now, not only from just a round-the-neck binocular, always on you, to, in your pack, and then long-range binocular, and then even spotting scope? What are you using?
So me and my dad are one of the few in our group that we're using the Leica Duo Vids, and so I've stuck with the Leica Duo Vids because I have a pair of 10 and 15s, right there on my, that I wear on my around my neck. And so I've stuck with those, but in my opinion, and all my guys have their 10 power Swarovski ELs and their, 15s in their pack for a little bit longer range. And the 15 Swarovskis are amazing. I mean, it's some of the best glass that there is. And so all my guys are running those. And then as far as spotting scopes, I believe pretty much all of us are running the 95 millimeter Swarovski, an incredible spotting scope. I love it. And then we also have I think three sets of the Kowa Big Eyes, the 32 power binoculars, which are awesome. And so that's what we use. Swarovski, the Kowa Highlanders, and then the 95 millimeter spotting scope.
Right on, good stuff. And do you feel like the Kowas, I mean, yes, they're heavy, and yes, the tripod's heavy, but they are pretty amazing when you can sit out on some of those big knobs out on the strip, and I mean, literally you can look out there, 3 miles plus and actually be seeing deer and tell if it's a buck, tell if it's a good buck. Long-range glassing on the strip is imperative, wouldn't you say?
It is, for sure. And I know, what's the 95 millimeter, because aren't you running the 90, well, you're running both, aren't you, 95 and 65, Jay, with the...
Yeah, so my spotting scope is a 65 and a 95, the modular. I like the straight eyepiece. And I'm using actually the twin spotters, the STS, the 65 millimeter twin spotting scopes on a bracket. So I've kind of gone, from the Doctors to the Kowas to the BTX and then back to the 65 millimeter twin spotters, and I really like them. They're 25 by 50 power wide angle lens with the 65 millimeter objective, and I really like them. They're half the weight of the Kowas, but I still know that the Kowas, I mean, edge to edge clarity, the Kowas are pretty darn hard to beat. It's just the weight is
exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. And that's, what is it, the BTX or whatever for the, for the 95 or 65. It's pretty awesome too. I believe one of my guys, Joe, he's running the BTX, and he loves it just for that, for that reason, the weight. He can have it in his pack all the time. Doesn't have to worry about getting the Kowas out of the case, in your pack, and then back, so. But
let's talk about your team and how important it is to have a team of guys that are dedicated for, having a passion for mule deer and having that mule deer addiction, like what your outfitting business is named after, how important that is for the success of your group.
It's in my opinion, it's really important. And, we have just a good group of guys, my family and my good friends that have been doing this with me for years. And so, like last year, it was a tough year, and we still, we just have had such a good group of guys, not only in my guys, but also our clients. And so we had a great time. But a good group of guys is really important. If, for me personally, I wouldn't be able to scout as much and as many areas without my guys. And so they do an awesome job, and just love doing it. It's our passion. We love it. We're not the type of outfitter that has, does it for a living. We do it because we love it, and we love hunting big deer and, and being out on the strip. And so.
It's awesome. Brec, it's always great talking to you. I always enjoy, I haven't been up for a few years, but I always enjoy coming up to your camps. Why don't you tell the listeners the best way to reach out to you, the best way to follow what you guys are doing?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me, my number is 435-632-3541. If you don't get me, leave me a message or shoot me a text, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And then also, you can follow us on Instagram. I believe it's MDAE Outfitters on Instagram. And so those are probably two of the best ways.
Awesome, man. Well, God bless you. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited for you on a wet year. I can just tell by listening to you, you're fired up, and it's always good to have one of your buddies fired up about something. And I'm excited. I'm sitting on 18 points myself, so you never know what will happen. I'll have to draw on the random, but I'll take it if it happens. So
that's right.
I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us, and congrats on the success of your surveying business as well. I know it's just keeping you busy, and then it allows you to make good money so that you can spend the amount of time that you do out on the strip just beating up your equipment. Are you still running a Razor?
I am. Yep, still running the Razor.
What tires are you running now, or what have you found? Have you found any new tires that are better than others?
I'm still running the Maxxis. I can't remember what it is. It's not the
Bighorn Maxxis.
It's not the Bighorns. It's more of like a street tire.
Oh, radial tire, like a radial.
Yeah, like a radial tire. Exactly. Yep. I can't remember what the model is on them, but it is a Maxxis tire, and it's done really well for me.
Have you had the Razor over 90 yet?
Close.
No comment. If you just see a dust cloud out on the strip, there's a good chance it's Brec or one of his team members. Sounds good, buddy. God bless you. Thanks for coming on. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Bye.
We'll see you. Bye.